Abortion clinics have begun closing in a number of US states after the constitutional right to choose to terminate a pregnancy was overturned by the Supreme Court. Protests and celebrations are continuing in the United States following the US decision to overturn Roe versus Wade. The fallout to the ruling is leaving many Americans wondering if this decision could pave the way for further opinions to be overturned in the future. Joining us now to discuss this is commentator and CEO of corporate strategy advisory firm Recastled, Kosha Gada. Kosha, it is amazing to have you here. Now, what we've seen a lot from the mainstream media on this, it's sort of implied that now no one is allowed to get an abortion in the USA across the whole nation. But that's not the full story, is it?
It's not, and great to be with you, Caleb and Daisy. So the way the international media in particular has covered this issue is really overstated and distorted. It's quite stunning, actually. All this has done, the Roe v. Wade decision that first was ruled on in 1973, it basically said that it derived in sort of sketchy fashion that the right to abortion is a federal right that's protected by the Constitution. And the legal theory on which this was determined was shaky. So even very pro-choice people over the past 50 years, legal scholars, have said that at some point this is very vulnerable to being overturned because the way that ruling was determined in 1973 just did not hold up from a legal standpoint. And all this ruling is doing is it is returning it to the states with the people where it belongs. Because in a country as complicated as the U.S., as diversified as the U.S., it's a representative republic. It's a federated system, much like Australia, but much bigger with 50 states. The values are different, and the values of voters in Mississippi are very different from the values of voters in San Francisco or New York. And so all this is doing is returning it to the states. You're going to end up with a situation where probably a third of the states will actually remain quite lenient with abortion. The New Yorks and Californias of the world, it'll remain all the way up to the end of gestation. A third of the states are going to have it quite banned. These are the more religious states that view it differently. And a third of the states are going to have it where it's legal until about 15 weeks, which is, by the way, in line with most European nations.
So does this not, this is all caused essentially by the fact that the way the Supreme Court is set up in the US is that it can become the political plaything of whoever has the ability to appoint a judge to the Supreme Court. So if you're lucky enough to have that opportunity, you can stack it with someone who agrees with your politics, which is how you get the original decision of Roe v. Wade, and that's how you end up with the decision of it being brought back. Where can this go from here?
You know, it shouldn't be that way. In theory, the Supreme Court and the entire judiciary should be above politics, and their role is simply to interpret the Constitution and to determine that any laws passed by the legislative branch are in accordance with the Constitution. That's what it should be. But you're right, Caleb, that over the years, courts have become politicized, unfortunately, and that does play into this. But basically all they're saying here, and I think the reason why it took 50 years for this to happen is because the states who were opposed to the original ruling in 1973 were waiting for a moment in time when they believed that the justices on the bench would be originalists or constitutionalists, and so this case would have a chance of leading to an overturn. So it was half a century in the making, and I think with the election of Trump, the 3 vacancies that he filled were filled by these originalists or constitutionalists, and that's where the state of Mississippi brought this case that led to the ruling that you saw yesterday.